everyone. My name is Dr. Saima Wasti. I am a social entrepreneur and a neuro occupational therapist. I welcome you all on this live with Autism Connect. I'm very grateful to Autism Connect to give me this opportunity, this platform to come here and discuss with you about a very important topic to me, that is emotional regulation and strategies of meltdown management. So a brief introduction more about what work I do. So I run a company named as Kikstartz Rehabilitation, where we focus on the life skills intervention for people with different disabilities, people with different neurodiverse conditions, and we work from pediatric to the adult range, to the adults. With Autism Connect on this platform, I am thankful to them to come together and bring such professionals ahead to talk about their work and spread corresponding information about it. So to begin with, about emotional regulation part. So emotions regulation is a very vast and a broad topic, but today I will be concising it to just talk about meltdown, as we have a different range of audiences who will be listening to us. I will begin with very basic understanding about emotions, about what happens during meltdown. Then we will talk about understanding meltdowns and tantrums, and then we will move to intervening strategies both for meltdown and tantrums, and then a little more about what should be a set of handy techniques when there is a meltdown happening. So as we are aware that autism is a bioneurological condition, and emotions is one of the very challenging part of autism management. Although there are a lot more aspects that are challenging, but emotions regulation is considered as the most important. Now, typically we are able to regulate our emotions, and whenever there is a stress chemical building up, our coping mechanisms break it down. But that doesn't happen with our children who are on spectrum or adults who are having different challenges coming up due to spectrum. They have difficulty in identifying emotions and connecting them to the general world. They have hard time in rebounding after a meltdown has happened. Generally, I have very commonly seen this, that once we see them a little calm, a little staying away from the crowd, we think that the rebound has happened, they are all fine. But the emotions is still lingering upon them, and this is a very crucial part to understand what needs to be done at that point of time. Now, I'll go into a little basic of science here to understand the series of events that happens. So, a trigger can happen because of multiple things. It can be because of a cognitive overload. It can be because of a lot of demands coming. It can be because of social demand. It can be because of any sensory demand. There is a wide range of possibilities. So whenever there is a sensory or an emotional overload happening, there is an increase in the stress chemicals. Now, what are these stress chemicals? There are a lot of chemicals that get released in the brain when the load is increasing the capability. This can be cortisol, and this stress chemical leads to some systemic changes in the body, which is not in the control of a child or a person who is going through this. So whenever there is a release of stress chemicals, there is an alarm. Now, this alarm will happen into two ways. Either the person gradually starts going unresponsive, lethargic. A child can just put his head down on the table and lay down or go to sleep. He can zone out. The best possible way to relate over here is you'll feel him a little zone out. So this is one process where a shutdown is happening. That means there is a stress chemical being built up. there is a gradually some changes happening in the brain, and then a shutdown where the child is unresponsive, where the person becomes unresponsive, and this is happening at a neurological level. The second possibility here is that this happens so fast, in such a fraction of second the change has happened, that a child or a person has moved from 0 to 100. That means the boiling point has reached, the high threshold, the threshold has reached in a fraction of second. So what is to be done at that moment? We have to identify the series of events before it. So I hope till now we are clear with shutdown and meltdown. So we are talking about autism, the emotions that happen. One fact is that the stress level of stress chemicals in a spectrum is much more than what it would be for a neurotypical. That means from baseline, even at rest, at this moment, our stress chemicals are regulated. But for a neurodiverse person, the stress chemicals will be on a high alert level, where they keep building with small events, and the threshold will differ for everyone. So with the series of changes, demands in the domain of cognitive, social, emotional, task demands, all these small domains, there will be some changes happening in the day. Because of these changes, in the entire day, stress chemicals are getting built up. Now, our coping mechanisms, they deal with the stress chemical and break it down as and when they start getting accumulated. But in a person on spectrum, child or adult, this coping mechanism doesn't really help much after a period of time. More so, one more thing to know over here is that we identify our stress chemicals. We know that, okay, now this is getting too much for us. Now we need to take a break. But whereas for those on spectrum, children or adults, it gets difficult to identify the stress chemicals. Research says that their understanding, their internal sensory receptors understanding, their awareness is much less, because of which till the time they have reached that boiling point, they are not aware that something has really gone wrong. And snap, in a fraction of second, things change. Either the child is into complete zone out, shutdown, or he is in a meltdown. So that was about understanding shutdown and meltdown. Now, one of the very important factors is looking for the signs. Each child, each person will have different visible signs when it comes to any kind of behavior that is going to be seen. Now, next thing to understand here is, whenever stress chemicals hit the boiling point, now I am going to address specifically here meltdown. We understood stress chemicals, we understood shutdown, we understood meltdown. Now we are going to understand just meltdown and discuss about its management. When stress chemicals, they start reaching the boiling point, they have to come out. They have a need to come out. And how do they come out? They come out through a proprioceptive input. That's through a proprioceptive sensation. Now, what's a proprioceptive sensation? There are a lot of sensory systems in the body. Out of these, there are some internal sensory systems that are called as proprioceptive systems. Now, these systems, they help in regulating and calming the body. Whenever the stress chemical gets built up, the need to come out of stress chemical is in the form of proprioception. That is why the child will start hitting, banging, throwing. These proprioceptors are found in your joints, in your tendons. So they are those body awareness, deep sensations. The reason why in meltdown the child turns aggressive is that proprioceptive link, where he will be hitting, banging, maybe visibly seen as aggressive, very violent, or maybe much more than what I'm saying. It totally depends upon the situation. Knowing that stress chemicals easily build and they quickly build up for the children on spectrum, we need to give them frequent breaks of proprioceptive input where the need to release the stress chemicals is available for them. I will discuss more about its importance and how it can be brought to use when we discuss about in detail more about strategies. So I can see a few people over here live in the live. If they have any questions, they can just drop it down and I will be happy to take up those questions later. Okay. Now, coming to common causes of meltdown, I have, I think, mentioned about it, but very briefly, I will just give some more pointers as a repetition. So one of the very important cause is sensory overload, information overload, emotional overload, task performance demands is exceeding the capability, sudden change or shift in the expectation, intense frustration setting in again and again, lack of communication. Yes, for non-verbal children or non-verbal individuals on spectrum, it gets much more frequent, and unable to control everything around. So these are some of the very common causes of meltdown. Now here we need to pause and understand that what is the difference between a meltdown and a tantrum. I'm going to address to some common myths also, which many times while interacting with parents or with older people on spectrum, this is surfaced up. This comes quite often, that how do you understand if it is a meltdown or a tantrum? Now there are some fundamental points that I will share, which becomes easy to relate to when you are observing. See, tantrum is something way different from meltdown. You can say that meltdown is more like an automatic process happening, and tantrum is more like a directed process that is happening. Meltdown will be something that appears just like a panic mode. It there is no, the child will not show a need to control the behavior. Whereas in tantrum, there will be some motive, there will be something, whether the child wants something or wants to escape something. Usually it occurs in this combination only, wanting something or escaping something that he doesn't want. When the child is showing tantrum, when that time there is a more possibility that child can focus on other things around. He will look at you, he will watch for those signs to get that attention. He will look for reactions when he is being disruptive, that is snapping something, banging something. He'll look at the parent or the caregiver around for a few seconds. You need to have a very sharp eyes for this. I think by the virtue of parenting, by the parents get this understanding very quickly, but many a times this is missed. That is why I am highlighting on the importance, because if we cover up meltdown in the umbrella of tantrum, then we are doing a real big harm to the child. So that is why I'm going to touch upon all the points. Then during the tantrum, the child can have the ability to negotiate, to talk out, or if aggression is being displayed, he will often seek out others to talk it back or at least get some attention. Whereas like I mentioned, meltdown is more like an automatic process. It's not something that is happening gradually. It can just, you will say that the child was having fun. We were in a mall, we were having fun. We were in a PlayStation, there were a lot of activities happening. The child was enjoying the game, and all of a sudden he's crying now. What happened? What just happened? What did I miss? But no, here you need to understand that the shutdown process had started from the afternoon when you moved from your car, and it gradually started building up. And now when the child has reached mall, he is in a place where there is lot of stimulus happening, lot of noise, lot of demand. He's playing, he's enjoying. There's a limit. You crossed that limit, and from 0 to 100, boiling point has come. The threshold has reached. Now here at this point, you are completely, now meltdowns are unpredictable, and at the same time scary, not just for the child but also for the parent, also for the caregiver. So let's come back to mall. So we were in the mall here, the child all of a sudden starts crying and parent is at loss. Kya hua? What just happened? But actually the stress chemicals were getting built up. You didn't pick it up. You didn't understand. You thought ki maza aa raha hai, he's enjoying, let's do it more. Let's have more fun because the child is enjoying. But the child doesn't have the awareness, he doesn't have that understanding yet so much ki what is getting a lot for me. If there is a lot of incoming stimulus happening, my internal awareness system is not answering that it is getting a lot until all of a sudden from 0 to 100 I have reached. And now that I have reached at that boiling point of 100, I am nicely enjoying this game in the mall, and all of a sudden I zone out. I snap out, I'm aggressive, I start crying loudly. My coping mechanisms have come to crash. Now, the coping mechanisms that this child was using till now have all gone down. Here in the mall, he is on the floor crying and headbanging. And parent doesn't know. Now, this is an embarrassing situation for parent where he wants to just help somewhere. He's trying to comfort the child. Kya hua, take this, do that. There is a lot of things already happening, and additionally parent is putting some more parent or caregiver, whoever is around, is trying to help the child. But here what is to be done, I'm going to cover up in the rest of the talk. Now, with this I've made a little difference in tantrums and meltdown. Now let's try in understanding how to intervene in tantrum and how to intervene in a meltdown. Whenever there is a tantrum, now this is something that I will recommend only when the tantrums is happening is on a milder level, or when the safety of the child is not getting compromised. If you think that the tantrum is happening at the cost of the safety, you need to immediately seek a professional help. You need to see an occupational therapist who will do a functional behavior analysis, who will recommend a lot of techniques, and what is to be done will be more personalized. Now, this is just a general construct. When it comes to intervening the tantrums, first thing you need to understand is the concept of ABC, the action, behavior, and the consequence. You need to understand and identify what function this behavior is serving when it's about tantrum. You might need to try to focus the child in a more appropriate way of getting his needs met. How do you do that? You can use visuals, stop, break cards. We use something called as replacement behavior, where we do a role play to get a desired behavior. Then we avoid giving into the tantrum. Now here, in case of tantrum, you have to intervene early, whereas in case of meltdown, the approach is totally different. For example, the child is showing a tantrum, and you have trained him for a particular way of expressing the same. Instead of crying, asking out, or instead of just laying down on floor, this is how you're supposed to express. You are working upon this kind of model with the child through role play, through replacement, through desired behavior, through reinforcing the desired behavior. But now the child has gone into tantrum. So what you will be saying, for example, if you want us to stop, the child wants something to be stopped, he wants to escape. If you want us to stop, then do so and so, or say so and so, whatever you are conditioning or training him on. As soon as the desired response comes from the child, you will immediately back off. You will follow what you had put forward as condition. You will respect that segment. Now, if this part doesn't work, this is one possibility of reinforcing the desired behavior. This part doesn't work. Remember that you have to minimize verbal and emotional responses to negative behavior. If there is some negative behavior happening, you have to stop over there, minimize the response, then go ahead. You have to be as calm as ice. If you start increasing your body language, changing your body language, your tone of talking, your interaction, this is going to get more difficult for the child to come in your control or to elicit any kind of desired response. If the child still doesn't respond, you need to pull off your attention and just walk away. Of course, you have to ensure the safety of the child, but you have to do it whenever possible. And if still all that is also not working, then a mild consequence can be got. That is loss of something or timeout or something like this. Any of these combinations is yet not working, you have to seek out a professional help. Now let's come to intervening in a meltdown. When the child is having a meltdown, the typical behavior techniques are first and foremost thing you need to give in is space and time. You don't have to rush in to calm the child, to hold the child, to stop him from the aggression, stop him from the panic. No, you have to use the safe hand approach. You have to make the child feel safe, competent and understood in that moment. So you need to give in a little time. Then in that heat of moment, you have to pull the child away from the situation that is causing the trigger. This sounds very simple, this sounds very logical, but it is so essential. And this is my experience of so many years and interacting with n number of parents. It is not practiced. Lot of times we miss upon the most simple looking stuff. So this is one of the technique that should be practiced, that identify that this is a meltdown, this is not a tantrum, this has to be dealt separately. You have to pull out the situation, you have to calm down. Then uske baad, once you have lessened the stressors, then you have to support the child to come out of that meltdown zone. In that moment, you cannot intervene in educating the child, or you cannot intervene in making him understand what was the right behavior, what was the wrong behavior, this is what was to be done, this is not to be done. No, none of this. This is one of a very handy technique that needs to be done. Then coming back to one more aspect, in the beginning I mentioned about importance of proprioception. Proprioception is somewhere linked with the physical aggression that starts coming out, because in order to release those stressor chemicals, it will come out in the form of proprioception. So the child here is going to start hitting around. So you need to give some calming strategies, some cool down strategies to the child. Now one of the things that I usually recommend is be around. As you get the chance to intervene a step further, just hold the hand, gently press onto the palm of the hand. Okay, so that is one of the way you can figure out which proprioceptive or which calming technique will work the best for the child, because there are a lot, but it's not one fit for all. Certain ones will work for certain children, certain ones will not work for other children. Okay, so there are a lot of such things that can be brought to practice. For example, once giving intermittent sensory breaks. Now this is another very important practice that should be brought. Strategy for management of meltdown is giving intermittent sensory breaks, which can be designed by an occupational therapist. You will know what kind of sensory input works best, so that you get an opportunity, you give an opportunity to the child to release the pent up stress chemicals throughout the day. Next thing is management. In the management of meltdown is understanding that if the child is getting too violent, too aggressive, keeping the safety, taking out the child over there, you give a time for rebound. For example, in the beginning I mentioned that it takes much more time to come out of that meltdown zone than what is seen to us. If the child is now quiet, he's calm, he's got into the control of the situation, you still need to give him some moments of free time, or just alone time, or just time through which he can relax. It may be an hour or much more than that. Depends. For some children it takes much more hours, because emotions, children on spectrum, people on spectrum generally have a very good sensory memory. So the event and the emotions felt around the event and whatever happened in the body, that will stay around with the child for a longer time. Next segment, which is very important to understand, is what are the delayed effect that happens, and how do we work upon. Okay, before I move to this part, I will cover another very important aspect. A lot of parents come and question me that if I start, how will my child learn frustration tolerance? If he's having such frequent meltdowns and I take him out of situation, I make him feel safe and I allow him to just relax in that moment, I'm not able to train him for a frustration tolerance. Now you need to understand here that learning happens when the child is calm. Learning happens when the child is in the control of the situation. Learning doesn't happen when the child is on a fight-flight mode. You cannot do exposure theory over here. You expose the child to different situation and then you expect him to gradually start adapting to the meltdown. That is a completely, that's a huge myth, and it is actually, it does a lot of harm to the child. So coming to what I was saying, there is a lot of delayed effect that happens on our children because of meltdown, and that actually affects their learning and ability to participate in a meaningful engagement further. So we need, for it's okay that he does certain moments than him going in a frequent meltdown, because this child will not engage into any interaction or effective learning. We need to, meltdown is something that comes more as preparation than after management. You need to, the strategy would be divided into 3 segments. One is pre-meltdown, during meltdown, and post-meltdown. Now, pre-meltdown is one of the very important strategy, is equipping with knowledge. Having the right set of knowledge. Knowledge doesn't mean the science and the things that I'm saying, that's all. You need to have the knowledge of your child. You need to have the knowledge of how much he is able to, what are his triggers, identifying his triggers. Second is reference observation. This is also a very important strategy. Now, these are all things that I'm saying is pre-meltdown. Reference strategies, reference observation means that you have to correlate from previous events and observe how did that meltdown happen, what is the pattern of meltdown, and how, when your child starts going in shutdown, how is the process, how fast he goes into it. That means how much of his coping skills he is able to use. These are the things you have to very closely watch. Where is it happening more? In the home setting or outside? Or in the school, if there is somebody adult. I work a lot with adults also for their emotional regulation, where I directly work with neurodiverse adults on spectrum, not just on spectrum but different neurodiverse conditions, because we do a lot of intervention when it comes to childhood, but when it comes to adult, when the demand on the emotions, the social is much more, there is no intervention actually being done. It's all like gradually with time they learn. I will touch upon this part at the end. So first thing is equipping with the knowledge of the child. Second thing is reference observation, having a very sharp reference observation. Screen the cause and effect. That's another strategy. What happened, what led to what. You may just see that the child was having fun in the mall and he snaps out, or he was sitting quietly and all of a sudden he gets disturbed. Maybe the effect is, the cause was somewhere in the morning and the effect is happening somewhere in the evening. So that also comes with reference observation. Then withdrawal of the demand. Now let's move to, this was about pre-meltdown. Now let's move to during the meltdown. During the meltdown, it's very important to identify, if that, first thing, identify if it's a tantrum or a meltdown. You identify this is a meltdown, you have to do an, You have to take out the child from that atmosphere, from that situation. Withdrawal. Allow the child to rebound. Give him as much time as required. You are not losing on anything in regards to his frustration tolerance or being able to cope with his emotions. All that is not happening. That has different set of strategies. At this moment, the priority is the child's functioning, because this is happening at a systemic level. It's happening at a neurological level. With the release of cortisol, there is so many things happening in the body. The heartbeat is increasing. There is an adrenaline rush. There is a gut changes happening. So I'm not getting into details of that, but yeah. Third thing is that preparing for it. That means intermittent sensory diet. This is very important. I had a case where the child was very calm, was not having too many sensory concerns. At the moment, he's going to an inclusive school, but at the end of the day, or maybe in the mid of the day, the child starts getting zoned out. He starts getting unresponsive. He's not in contact with what is happening in the classroom teaching, even at a one-on-one, when he's having his special education separately. So parents thought that he gets low, he needs a little pushing, you need to drive a little more energy by motivating him and encouraging him. But actually the stress chemicals were getting built up. He was going into shutdown. One fine day, he comes in the evening, he's completely fine. He comes from school and all of a sudden he has a big meltdown. And the parents are at complete loss. What happened? I mean, this never happens. Why today? They go back to school and intervene. What all events happened in the school? This is a child who is a little in the older class. They try and intervene. What all happened? But everything was fine. There was no as such demand. Everything was just like the way in the routine it is. There was nothing unexpected, no change. Then why this happened? Actually, the child was going gradually into shutdowns, but it was never noticed. There was a lot of coaxing happening to get him more aroused, to get him more functional, to get him out of that lethargy. But we missed over that it was the shutdown, it was gradual build-up of stress chemicals, and then one fine day, meltdown. In this case, what should have been done? Planning an intermittent sensory break for the child. Even if it doesn't seem the child is getting up and running out of the class, you don't need to wait for a child on spectrum to get up and run out of class or disturb the class to give them intermittent sensory break. You need to plan it as a part of their routine, because that will make a lot more difference. It will keep them more regulated. It will help them in setting them back to the demands of the classroom. What all can be? Now let's come to what all can be in the calming strategies and the proprioceptive strategies that we include. Okay, this sensory break will involve more of proprioceptive activities. There can be something like run, jump, skip, chew, suck, blow. Okay, sequence of things that happen as a part of his break exercises. There can be some activities which involves use of his big joints or big muscles. There can be weighted vests given to him. There can be climb, crawl, scoot or something like this, or a wheelbarrow that can be given. So these are all calming techniques that can be used as a part of his intermittent sensory break. Now, after we have understood what happens during meltdown and certain precautions and things like that, now let's move to another very, very important segment, and I focus this a lot. Please do not punish meltdowns. I have seen this happening, but I won't promote punishment of tantrums also. That is why when I mentioned about intervening in tantrums, I said that minimal consequence, mild consequence. If you don't do this, you will miss out on this. Not a very severe punishment, because that really doesn't go well practically. Our objective is to make the child feel safe, secure. You cannot just go there and start punishing meltdowns. Now, another very important thing is that when the meltdown is happening, it's better to say nothing than to go there and speak something.
If the child is more regulated, he is able to understand your commands, or he's able to, after the meltdown has happened and the child is calm, or during the process also, if it is still getting in your control, you don't need to educate the child at that time. You can direct him on what to do, like go down and lie on your bed, you can do this. You facilitate, being a facilitator to the options, externally providing him as a coping mechanism. Child's coping resources has come to an exhaust. Now here you are providing alternatively some external resources to him. After things have settled, now the preparation of his frustration tolerance. Now this is the last segment that I am talking about. How your child will learn to adapt such demands. First thing what you can do is make a list of the situations. What all situations leads to meltdown. Now coming to reference observation, the first strategy that I mentioned in the hands-on, equipping with the knowledge of child and reference observation. You will make a list. After you made a list in the hierarchy from the most demanding or the most scary situation for the child that leads to meltdown to the least one, you will pick up the last two, the least ones. From the least one, the one that triggers minimum meltdown, or the one which the effect of meltdown is minimum because of a X trigger, you will take that X situation. Now this is into the situation, this is all being done when the child is completely all right, he's well composed. What you will do in this situation is you will create a role play. You will fabricate similar situation from the hierarchy that you have made of the least harmful one or the least triggered one. After you've made a simulated situation, you will do a role play with the child where you will equip the child depending upon his ability, on his skills, on his medium. Now this takes a lot of time. You need to do this work for a long period of time to see any effective result. It's not that you start doing it today and next week mein the child learns and next week mein the magic is happening. No. So you will start training him with one or two alternate coping mechanisms, and you will start observing that the child will start adapting. You are better equipping him with coping mechanisms. So this is happening to role play. When the role plays happen, a short time later, you will debrief the child. You make him understand. You focus him with what worked in that situation. You created artificially the situation. He used it, what worked, what didn't work, that can be done later, but you have planned and prepared the child with something like this happening. So that is how you can work on child's frustration tolerance. So you don't have to expose the child or let him be in a meltdown to develop more and emerge more stronger and adapt to the changes. No, that is a part of separate training. I do a lot of this in our online interventions when it through using role play and different simulated cards and situations and some real life task sheets with parents. The last thing to close this talk, I think we are already on our time, is about management of meltdowns in adults. Although today's segment I focused on children, but I will just give few minutes about adults. Emotional regulation is a very significant part of every life. You, me, everyone, be it neurotypical or a neurodiverse. Early intervention for emotional regulation should be started from the age of at least 5 years. We don't have to wait for the child to be 7-8 years to start working or start making him identify his emotions, start making him identify what is happening to him, start making him learn about his body, learn about the physical changes that happen when the emotions are shifting. No, you don't have to wait for a time. You have to start. Although you won't see the result or effect of it at that time, but you will definitely see it in the long run. And of course, there are a lot of terms and conditions to it, pros and cons to it, a lot of situations to it. I cannot commit or promise on anything, but it helps. It does help because I have practically seen it happening. I have done it. It's not from theory or books. It's just lived experiences. So First thing we miss on is intervention in the early childhood on the emotions regulation. Second thing that we miss on is interventions of emotional regulation in a later adulthood. When the child has crossed, when the person has crossed 15, he's in the teens or maybe in his 20s. At that time, the demands of the situation is different. At times, the social demands or the cognitive demands, environmental demands are completely different, along with all the hormonal changes that has happened in the body. From this time onwards, there is a basic coursework that needs to be followed in regards to identifying. The basic skeleton is going to be more or less same of what I explained about Meltdown, but intervening into that is going to be extensively with practicing, extensively working, depending upon whether what is the level of understanding or what is the capability of the person. We try to intervene and equip them with right set of knowledge about their own emotions, about their own coping mechanisms. We also modify mindfulness and we bring it to practice when it comes to emotional regulation. So I think with this I will bring a little closure. I'll just summarize quickly what I said in this half an hour. I started with understanding about emotions, what are emotions, why in autism there is so much of difficulty in emotions regulation. I spoke about stress chemicals. I made you all understand on in autism the baseline stress chemicals are anyway high. There it leads to continuous built up much more than what it would be in a neurotypical. Then I made you understand how to identify about shutdowns and meltdowns. Then after that we covered in Meltdown understanding and differentiating. First thing, understanding the cause of meltdown. After the cause of meltdown, we did understanding of tantrums and meltdown, intervening in tantrum and meltdown, then intervening in the meltdown in 3 phases: pre, during the meltdown, and preparation of frustration tolerance. And I spoke about adults with emotion regulation. So that was in summary. Is if there is any question, I'd be happy to take up. Do we have any questions? Okay, I think we have no questions here. If anybody would like to reach out and understand more about emotions regulation, I will be happy to help. You can follow me on Kickstart Rehabilitation page, which is on all the social media handles. You can write to me on vastisaima@kickstartz.com. You can reach out to any of the social media handles. Our program runs even online because we have, this is effective. We can work on online with a lot of task sheets involved for parents. So if you want more details, you can anytime just connect with us, connect for good, and we will be happy to help you. And to end it, I again thank Autism Connect page for wonderful collaboration and giving me an opportunity to share a little bit